Hi everyone, Kris from Stone Age Gamer here, and as you may have heard, Nintendo is shutting down the 3DS and Wii U eShops permanently, and that means a lot of really cool and interesting games are theoretically vanishing into the ether, like the Wii Shop Channel before them. Now, we here at Stone Age Gamer are big proponents of game preservation. We even sell a couple of ways that you can play some of these releases that are going to be disappearing. However, the eShops themselves are the official legit way to get a lot of this stuff, and in many cases the only way to get some of this stuff. So before they closed, I thought it would be fun to go down a list of games that I think are very important to take a look at before these shops close down for good. Let's take a look.
Alright, let's start with the Mario stuff, which there is surprisingly quite a lot of. And let's kick it off with my personal favorite thing not to be missed out on, and that is Super Mario Advance 4 on the Wii U. The Super Mario Advance games are pretty neat to begin with, especially the first one. And while they're all available on Wii U, Mario Advance 4 offers something truly unique and special. When this game came out on Game Boy Advance, there was a whole mess of levels only available via the e-reader accessory. Many of them never even saw release outside of Japan or at all, and they're bonkers! They combine elements of all 4 Mario Advance games, and each and every one of them is included in this Virtual Console release. It's basically a whole new Mario adventure that, unless you already have this Wii U release, you've more than likely never played before. Next, there's Super Mario 64 DS on Wii U, and you're going to see a bunch of DS games here because the Wii U had the unique distinction of being a home console that can actually properly support DS games. So for the unique opportunity of playing DS games on your TV, the Wii U was the way to go, and Super Mario 64 DS is an interesting animal. It's a full-on remake of Super Mario 64 for Nintendo 64, and if you're a fan of that game, this is a way better way to experience it than on an actual DS system. Speaking of the DS, the original New Super Mario Bros. Is a great game. These games get a lot of flack for being kinda sterile, but this first one is incredibly charming and clever and well worth playing on your television. There were a ton of these Mario vs. Donkey Kong Minis games, but the Minis on the Move for 3DS is probably my favorite because it's quite an interesting little game. It's got a great soundtrack too. Back to 2D Mario platformers, did you know there were DLC levels for New Super Mario Bros. 2? They exist, and they're probably more interesting than most of what's in the actual game, including a couple of remakes of old Mario stages. Neat! If you're an RPG fan, the original Mario & Luigi Superstar socket is available on Wii U Virtual Console, and it's a pretty great way to play that game on your TV. But it's reasonable to expect that someday Nintendo may offer GBA games on another service. DS games, however, are by nature a completely different animal, so grabbing Mario & Luigi Partners in Time on Wii U might be the only official way you'll ever get to play that one on a television. Dr. Mario is an excellent puzzle game, and as of now, the only way to play it in HD is to grab Dr. Luigi on Wii U. It's got a bunch of extra modes, and while it isn't perfect, classic head-to-head one-on-one Dr. Mario is probably best played here. It's no Dr. Mario 64, but it'll do. And speaking of puzzles, have you been enjoying the litany of Pickross games on the Switch? Well, they all got their start on the original Game Boy, and that first game, Mario's Pickross, is available for a couple of bucks on the 3DS eShop. It's excellent. And speaking of Game Boy excellence, you should absolutely drop the couple of dollars on one of the best games Nintendo has ever produced, Donkey Kong for Game Boy, which is available on the 3DS Virtual Console. It is beyond outstanding. Finally, Warioware. The original game is on the Wii U Virtual Console, as is Touched and Smooth Moves, though Touched on Wii U is probably the only way you'll ever play that one on a TV. And while it's also available physically, Warioware Gold on 3DS is well worth your time. Alright, let's move on over to the Zelda stuff. It's a much shorter list than the Mario one, but there are some really interesting options here that are going away for good. First, we have the DS games, Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. These games are a bit on the divisive side, but if you've ever been curious about them, this currently is the only option to actually play them on a TV. Same goes for Minish Cap, though again, I'd be surprised if Nintendo kept GBA games off the Switch for all eternity, but still, it's a great game that looks great on your TV. Over on the 3DS, both Oracle games, that's Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons for Game Boy Color, are available on the 3DS eShop Virtual Console. It may not be the only way to play these games, but it is still a very good one. Next, let's talk Metroid. Metroid stuff is currently very available, and when these eShops close, that's going to change a lot. The original Metroid 2 Return of Samus for Game Boy is up on 3DS Virtual Console, so if you've enjoyed Samus Returns on 3DS, a couple of dollars will allow you to go back and experience the original version. Meanwhile, the Wii U is a Metroid monster. Both Fusion and Zero Mission are available and look fantastic on TV. Then there's the DS game Metroid Prime Hunters, which isn't perfect, but it is a very interesting game that works surprisingly well on the Wii U. And last but certainly not least, we have Metroid Prime Trilogy. This is an absolute must because it actually runs better than the disc version. Prime 3 on the disc version has some killer loading times, and they've been greatly reduced for this digital release. Now, if you're like me, and you're a crazy person, Metroid always reminds you of Kid Icarus, and the 3DS was the ultimate Kid Icarus machine. The exquisite 3D Classics Kid Icarus is far and away the best way to experience the NES original. It plays better, and has the option to use Pit's wings to glide down slowly, which makes the game's absurd difficulty at the beginning a bit easier to swallow, and the backgrounds take this game to a whole new level. It is simply wonderful. The series' oft-overlooked second entry is also on the 3DS eShop, Kid Icarus of Myths and Monsters. This game has a lot of similarities to Metroid 2, and then it loses some of the NES original's charm, but it actually plays much better in a lot of ways. Last, we have Kid Icarus Uprising. This game isn't exactly hard to find physically, I just wanted to plug it because if you own a 3DS and are even passively interested in Kid Icarus, give this game a go, it's phenomenal! As for the rest of the Virtual Console services, there's a lot to look at. The Game Boy Mega Man games are great if you're a fan of the series, and they're completely unique among their NES brethren. All 5 are up now on the 3DS eShop. Mulmania is a Miyamoto joint and plays honestly a little bit like Portal. It's quite a good game. Balloon Kid is basically what if they took Balloon Trip mode and Balloon Fight for NES and made it into a full-blown adventure. It's marvelous and features a killer Hip-to-Knock soundtrack. There's also a variety of Game Gear games on the service. Yay, Game Gear! NES Pinball is the one exception I'd make for the Wii U NES Virtual Console. It's inexplicably not on the Nintendo Switch online service, but the game is a joy, even with the abysmal NES emulation that the Wii U supported. Super NES did not have that same problem, and there are a few gems still available here that aren't available anywhere else, like Final Fight 2 and 3 and Axelay. But for the most part, if it's a game you want to play, it's probably been recently re-released elsewhere. The Wii U is also currently one of the better ways to play Bomberman 64 and Ogre Battle 64. One of, anyway. And again, there's a bunch of DS games worth looking into, but if I had to make just one more recommendation, I'd probably make it for Advance Wars Dual Strike. It's not going to be a part of the upcoming Advance Wars collection, and if you like those kinds of games, this is a winner. That just leaves a bunch of random odds and ends, which in all honesty are some of the most fun stuff out there. On the 3DS and Wii U, there was a series of really interesting games called Artstyle. My favorite was the 3DS game Artstyle Picto-Bits, but there's a ton of these that are all going to vanish soon, which stinks. The DSi got an exclusive sequel to the Game Boy game X, which itself is the sort of inspiration for Star Fox. The game's called Xscape, and it is wild. Before turning into a sort of a mess of a Kickstarter, the folks at Atui released a delightful little puzzle platformer called Chicken Wiggle. It's supposedly coming to Switch in HD form at some point, and it's been renamed Hatch Tales. But right now, Chicken Wiggle, the best video game title of all time, is available on 3DS. There is a great Box Boy game on Switch, but the original Box Boy games are on the 3DS, and they're excellent. Same goes for Pushmo, which is not on Switch in any form just yet, but did have a Wii U game. Harmonite is a fantastic rhythm platformer from Game Freak, and they really do make excellent games when they aren't making Pokemon. This one's a real gem, do not miss out on it. Again, if you're a Pickross fanatic, did you know that there's a metric ton of other Pickross games on the 3DS? The Pickross E-Series is more Pickross, so if you've been enjoying those Pickross S games on Switch, here's a whole lot more of the same. Sakura Samurai is a cool game about a samurai dodging and counterattacking. It's super neat and very fun. Rhythm Heaven Megamix is one of the best games on the 3DS, and it's only digital in the US, which means this is the only way to get it, and it is absolutely amazing. Affordable Space Adventures on Wii U is a great example of the potential the Wii U gamepad had. It's a local multiplayer game where you try to work together to pilot a cheap spaceship. Game & Wario and Wii Sports Clubs are both available physically, but they're getting expensive, especially Game & Wario, which is a neat collection of minigames. Meanwhile, Wii Sports Club is actually pretty pricey digitally too, but it's an HD version of Wii Sports, and it includes that cool thing where you put the gamepad on the floor for the golf game. Switch Sports will likely replace this game in general, but this is still worth a go. Finally, we have NES Remix 1 and 2. These games are indeed available as a dual pack called NES Remix Pack, but no matter how you get them, if you like NES games, these are not to be missed, even though they are based on the god-awful NES emulation on Wii U.
When the Wii Shop Channel closed down, I was super bummed that I didn't really get my act together in time to pick up a few of the weirder releases like Space Invaders Get Even and Muscle March. And those games are still just gone. They're poofed. Like the Gradius Rebirth, another one. They haven't resurfaced yet, and it's been years. So that shop was pretty small in comparison, especially to the 3DS eShop, which got just a massive amount of games on it, and it really stinks to see this stuff disappearing. So if any of the stuff I mentioned on this video looks interesting to you, hop on there, grab that stuff, do what you can to get it, and if you want to check out some of the other methods of getting a lot of the games that I mentioned, check out the links in the description, because game preservation is awesome. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you liked what you saw here today, please follow, comment, like, subscribe. Let us know what you think of the eShops closing down. Leave a comment and say if there are any major awesome games that are disappearing on these eShops that you think people should get. We always love hearing from everybody in the comment section. So thank you very much again for listening. On behalf of all of us here at Stone Age Gamer, keep playing games.